Hey there fellow Planeswalkers, I'm Justice, aka Gatewatcher, and this video is brought to you by viewers like you, so please drop a like, hit that subscribe button, and check out my Patreon for additional content. You can also help by shopping my online merch store on Threadless. Thanks for your support. Alright, let's get into it. For these budget deck tech episodes, I follow a few rules. I'm building these decks for under $30 using Scryfall pricing. This cost excludes the Oathbreaker itself if it costs over $5, and this cost excludes basic lands. I assume you already own those. I build these decks using the 6x6 method, meaning 6 cards for 6 strategies to make the deck work. As I'm explaining the cards, I'll also be explaining how to pilot the deck and how to win with it. Entering the Sanctum today is Sorin Imperious Bloodlord from M20. Sorin is thousands of years old and canonically one of the most powerful planeswalkers. He specializes in Sanguimancy, aka blood magic. Millennia ago, his grandfather Edgar Markov bestowed upon him the blessing curse of vampirism, which ignited his spark. He is responsible for the original sealing of the Eldrazi, watches over his home plane of Innistrad, and in general just does what he wants, cause who's gonna tell him no? This iteration of Sorin costs 2 and a black and comes with 4 loyalty. His first ability is a +1, target creature you can control gains Death Touch and Lifelink until end of turn. If it's a vampire, put a 1/1 counter on it. His second ability is also a +1. You may sacrifice a vampire. When you do, Sorin Imperious Bloodlord deals 3 damage to any target and you gain 3 life. His ultimate is a -3 that can be activated right away. You may put a vampire creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. This card practically screams Vampire Tribal, as all his abilities relate to the vampire creature type. The signature spell I paired with him is Delirium Skeins. It also costs 2 and a black, and forces every player to discard 3 cards, which can oftentimes be the majority of their hands. This deck will be focusing on getting Sorin out and using his ultimate ability immediately to get a giant threat on board, and then removing opponents' hands to limit their ability to counterattack our large threats. Let's get things started with our first strategy, Preparations. Executioner's Capsule, Sinister Concoction, and Gonti's Machinations are all 1-drop black spells. The first 2 are both removal spells that can dissuade your opponents from casting their creatures and gives you removal when you're out of cards in hand. Gonti's Machinations is a soft defensive spell that dissuades your opponents from attacking you early as you'll punish them and gain yourself life. Up next is Duress and Inquisition of Kozilek. You'll be wanting to remove anything that can mess with getting Sorin into play, so early counterspells are good targets. The rest of the hand you can get rid of with our signature spell Delirium Skeins later on. And finally, we have Cabal Ritual. Most fast mana cards are banned from Oathbreaker like Dark Ritual, but Cabal Ritual is just fine, and can get our Oathbreaker into play on turn 2. Later on in the game, when our graveyard is filled, we can use Cabal Ritual's Threshold to cast out some of our bigger spells. What are those big spells, you ask? On to strategy number 2, Big Summons. Defiant Bloodlord is a 4/5 flyer with, whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. This pairs perfectly with Sorin's first ability that grants lifelink. Skeletal Vampire gives us 2 1/1 Flying Bat tokens to give us some defenders, and Bloodlord of Vazgoth can give all our future vampires a huge boost with it granting them Bloodthirst 3. Enowan the Ruin Sage and Butcher of Malakir both force opponents to sacrifice their creatures, allowing us to stay dominant on the board. Finally, we have Chancellor of the Dross. I don't know of any deck except this one that would run this weird vampire. We can reveal this card from our opening hand. If we do, each opponent loses 3 life, then we gain life equal to the life lost this way. So if we start the game with this, we'll set our opponents to 17 and we start at 29. Then, Sorin can summon it out for a 6/6 flying lifelink tank for us to wreak terror with. With a big threat on the board, let's move into tactic number 3, Devastation. Our signature spell Delirium Skeins, Arterial Flow, and Tossiger's Cruelty all destroy hand resources. And Arterial Flow can even gain us some life and knock opponents' life down a bit if we have a vampire in play. We also have the Elder spell to take out opponents' planeswalkers and supercharge our own. Shadow's Verdict can take out creatures and planeswalkers with CMC 3 or less, and remove them from graveyards. This won't bother us too much because we have such high mana cost creatures. It will hit Sorin if he's in play though, so use with caution. Finally, there's Thief of Blood, which is a great target for Sorin to summon. When Thief of Blood enters the battlefield, it removes all counters from all permanents, and gets a +1/+1 counter for each counter removed. If our opponents have planeswalkers on the field, Thief of Blood will instantly kill them all, and can easily become a 10/10 or higher. With all this removal, our own hand is running dry, so let's go to strategy number 4, Reload. Kiru Mind Eater can steal our opponent's cards from their hand, which can help us with land drops or the occasional card we can cast. Blood Tracker can get us a lot of cards back when it dies, and is a good mana sink if we have the life to spare. Champion of Dusk drops in and gets us cards equal to the amount of vampires we control, at the cost of some life as well. Morbid Curiosity gets cards equal to the CMC of a sacrifice creature. With all of our high-cost creatures, this can easily refill our hand. Treacherous Blessing costs 3 mana for 3 cards, but will lose us some life for each spell we cast. This is just a better Ambitions cost if we can close up the game without casting too many more spells. In the long game, the spell can hurt, but we're playing aggressive. Finally, there's Asylum Visitor. At the beginning of each upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, we draw a card and lose a life. So if we Delirium Skeins and empty everyone's hand, we'll have replenished our own hand by the time our turn comes back around. We might end up discarding other vampires as well, so let's go into strategy number 5, Revive. Call to the Netherworld can get us a creature back to our hand from the graveyard, and is also a free cast with Madness. Victimize can get us 2 vampires back to the battlefield from the graveyard if we sacrifice one from our field. Price of Betrayal is in this slot because not only can it kill enemy planeswalkers, but we can also use it on Sorin if we want to send him back to the command zone and recast him to utilize his ultimate ability. Oathsworn Vampire and Silver Smoke Ghoul both revive themselves as long as we have life gain for the turn. Sorin's second ability pairs well with them, as we can sacrifice them to deal 3 damage and gain 3 life, allowing us to reanimate them. Our best reanimator is Drana, the Last Blood Chief. She's a formidable 4/4 flyer, and has whenever she attacks, target player chooses a non-legendary creature card from our graveyard. That creature gets returned to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. It also turns it into a vampire, but there were already vampires anyway. Our graveyard will have high impact vampires, so really any choice our opponent makes will be a good choice for us. We probably won't win the war with a single high cost vampire, so that's where our final strategy comes in. Number 6, Hardcasters. Sorin himself fits in this category, as we'll always be hardcasting him from the command zone. Null Priest of Oblivion is a solid hardcaster in either the early or late game. Early on, it's a 2/1 with Menace and Lifelink. Later on in the game, if we have enough mana to kick it, it will enter play with another vampire from our graveyard. Knight of the Ebon Legion is a solid 1-drop that scales up in power as the game goes on if we deal enough damage to our opponents. Next up, we have Vampire Nighthawk and its younger but stronger cousin, Nighthawk Scavenger. Each has Flying, Death Touch, and Lifelink, but Nighthawk Scavenger's power scales with the number of card types in opponents' graveyards. With our discard strategy, our opponent's graveyard should have plenty to boost its power. Lastly, we have Vampire Hexmage. It has First Strike, and we can sacrifice it to remove all counters from target permanent. So this Hexmage is essentially a Planeswalker killer for 2 mana. Now that we've seen the deck, let's check out the final price. At the time of this video, Sorin is over the $5 Oathbreaker rule, so he isn't counted in the price of both the EDH rec average and this deck's cost. The average Sorin Oathbreaker deck will set you back $206.90. To summon this Sorin deck to your game table, all you need is $29.97. That's all for this episode. What vampires would you want to summon to your ranks with Sorin? More Zendikari Bloodlords? Other Innistrad Courtesans? Or maybe some Ixalan Conquistadors? Let me know in the comments. If you're not quite ready to planeswalk away, check out my Patreon to get access to my Oathbreaker Discord server and other awesome benefits. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.